Hey everyone, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make music like Medasin. As usual, you can get the project file and samples from this video in the description, and yeah, let's dive in. So the first layer here is this chord synth, which sounds like this. And the way I made this, first off I'll show you the MIDI, so I'm just playing these major 7th chords. And what I've done is I've taken the lowest note and the highest note and put them up an octave. So you get like a nicer chord. And then I have this sort of rhythmic pattern playing. And like I said, it's all major 7th chords. Until that last one, which is just a regular 7th chord. So, yeah, it's just kind of playing this cool pattern. It's something I hear Medasin doing a lot in his music. It's a cool way to give it like an interesting kind of rhythmic vibe. And yeah, so as far as the synth sound goes, all it is it's just a sine wave. And then I have it set like this, going into a little bit of white noise as well. I have this on the algorithm where they're just playing together, so it's not doing any FM or anything. But yeah, we have a little bit of white noise. And then I have that going into a chorus, which just gives it a little bit of space. You can see I have that going into an erosion, which is for a little bit of bit crushing just on top of it to give it a little bit more character. And then I have that going into like this low cut / high pass thing. So the next layer here is this lead, which sounds like this. And the way I made this is it's just this pretty simple melody that's playing over the chords. And what I have is I have operator. I use this FM algorithm, so they're doing that. And then I have like 2 square waves. So we have this first one. And then the second one, which is an octave up with the FM. It sounds cool. And then I have a sine wave, which is also an octave up. And then what I have going on here is I have these going into this low pass filter, and then I have the LFO controlling the filter cutoff as well as the volume, and it's doing 8th notes. So if I turn that off, you can see it's just going like kind of straightforward. But when we add that, that's what gives it that cool kind of like vibe. Now, the next thing I have on here is I have this going into a chorus, just like the chords. It's just a good way to add some kind of depth to your sound and kind of give it a little bit of stereo width. I have that going into an echo, which gives it just a little bit of space without being like too much. The thing about this is like you want to keep it kind of tight. So if I use like a big reverb here or something, it wouldn't really, be quite as it just wouldn't work quite as well. And then after that, I just have that going into this EQ8, which is doing a bit of a high pass. And yeah, pretty simple there. So the next layer is this 808, which sounds like this. And so the way I made this is it's just playing the root notes of the chords and it's following the kick pattern. And what we're doing here is I have a sine wave in operator, and it's going into a pitch envelope, so we just get that kind of like clicky, sort of percussive sine wave sound. And then what I did was I used a saturator to sort of take it over the edge and make it more of an 808. So what's happening here is you can hear it's a little bit more distorted sounding, but it's really not like crunchy or anything like that. It's just kind of like adding some higher harmonics on top. So I'll show you on the spectrum. So if I play this without the saturator, you can see it's mostly just happening around that one point, which is known as the fundamental frequency. That's what you get when you just have a sine wave playing. But when I add the saturator, you can see all of a sudden there's these like 4 or 5 or 6 more extra points on there. So those are the extra harmonics added on top. The main big one there that was there when it was just a sine wave is the fundamental harmonic, and then all those extra ones on top. Yeah, they're just kind of sitting on top of there. So the way I did this was I turned up the drive a bit, and then I just kind of played around with the wave shaper and these color knobs here until I got it where I wanted. But this is a good way to make 808s because, yeah, you just get your own thing, and it's like a little bit more unique. And I think Medasin, he synthesized a lot of his 808s as well, so it's an important technique to try and know how to do. So the next thing I have here is this little vocal stab, which sounds like this. And the way I made this is I took this dry vocal stab. I will show you in the sample pack real quick. So I just took that, and what I did is, you can see I put an EQ8 here. It's just cutting out some of the low end, because if you listen, that kind of has a lot of low mids in it. And the thing is, this bass is like mostly happening in that area. So if I turn this EQ off, you can hear they kind of like clash a little bit there, and the 808 is a little bit less impactful. So I just have that cutting out a bunch of that stuff there. And yeah, after that I just have a reverb. Pretty straightforward. And then I have it going into this auto pan, which I have set to be a sort of volume shaper. If you don't know, to use auto pan as a volume shaper, all you have to do is just turn the phase all the way down, because when the phase is up to like 180, for example, all it's doing is it's turning the volumes of the left and right ear up and down. So when you turn that phase to 0, it's just turning up and down the volume of the mono signal, and then you get a nice volume shaping effect. So yeah, I just have that on there to make it a little bit more rhythmic and make it fit into the groove a little bit more. This is a nice little thing, I guess, at the beginning of like every 4 bars. Just kind of signifies it's like starting over a little bit. And yeah, so then the last thing here are the drums, which sound like this. So the way I made these drums is pretty straightforward. We'll start off with the kick. So the kick sounds like this. And the way I made this was I took this kind of like nice trap kick, and then I just put it into a saturator. I gave it a bit of drive, and then I played around with the analog clip to kind of like beef it up and give it a little bit more punch. So yeah, so like with the kicks, you know, I recommend trying these kind of like trap kicks and just sort of doing like a bit of saturation or even some compression on them if you do it the right way, and don't mess up the transients. You know, it can work. It's just kind of like the key here is like using regular trap drums, but sort of beefing them up a little bit more. And I don't want to say, you know, making them like EDM by any means, but like definitely kind of like, you know, taking them to a new place with processing. So the next thing is the snare, which sounds like this. And the snare is 2 layers. It's this one, and then this one. So you can hear, it's a pretty straightforward thing. We have like a clap layer, which is doing most of the high end and kind of like the crack of the sound. And then we have this little thing, which is giving it a little bit of like tone, or giving it like a little bit of like a tonal aspect, as well as adding punch, because all the punch is in like that kind of like dong. And then this is like the cracky part of the snare. Yeah, it's just like a good combination. The key here is layering, but not using like, not overlapping things. So we have 2 very different sounds that do 2 very different things. And then they come together for sort of the best of both worlds. So then the last thing I have here is this hi-hat, which sounds like this. And yeah, it's just a pretty straightforward trap hi-hat. I'll show you the original sample. So I made it like that. I took that sample and then I just pitched it down a bit. We're playing it at G sharp instead of C, which would be the same pitch as the original sample. And that just kind of like helps. Like, I hear Medasin using a lot of pitch down hi-hats in his tracks as well. It's a good way to, once again, like, sort of have trap drums, but, you know, do your own thing to them to make them kind of like unique. So then all I did on that is I didn't do any processing, but I did add a bit of track delay. So if you don't know track delay, I'll explain it briefly. All it does, basically, you turn it on by clicking this little D icon down here, and all it does is it moves the contents of your track over a certain amount of milliseconds. It would be the same thing, actually, as if I just zoomed in and moved this over, or like if I turned off the grid even and just moved it over a little bit. But by doing it with this little thing over here, you kind of get a little bit more control. It's a bit easier to work with, because if you're tired of it or like you just want to change it, you know, you just turn a little dial here, I guess, as opposed to having to like move all the contents of your track over. And yeah, it's just like a little bit more convenient. And one thing I do want to talk about also is I think that this sort of like chord synth is doing a little bit of percussion as well, because if you listen, especially if I turn up that white noise, you can hear the white noise, and especially at the end there, is kind of like making a bit of a rhythm from this pattern. And if we hear that in the full mix, if you're listening closely, you'll hear it almost kind of sounds like a bit of a shaker in the background. So I thought that was an interesting element there. But that's definitely like a good way to, use elements for more than one thing, or to kind of like get the most out of everything that's in there, so you can have as sparse a mix as possible. So that's really gonna be it for today, guys. Make sure to let me know what you think of this video. Once again, you can get the project file and samples from this video in the description. You can also go like this video and subscribe while you're at it. And check out my socials in the description as well. And I will see you guys again tomorrow with another tutorial.